This afternoon's cool. Whereas this morning were short education presentations delivered by your peer organizations that demonstrated innovative and transformative projects that entities within California state government are currently pursuing. The lunch presentation is more of a futuristic look. It's like, what could government be? And to launch this, I could not ask for a better starter than Gregg Descheemaeker from Intel. Intel is always great at delivering innovative and cool presentations and looks at the future. So without any further ado, please welcome to the stage Gregg Descheemaeker from Intel.
All right, so I got 10 minutes. Everybody can hear me all right? Thank you for the nice introduction, Russ. Welcome, everybody. I know, so we're here, government transformation. You've spent the morning seeing probably multiple iterations of what people or how people define transformation to you. I'll give you our own viewpoint of that through the lens of Intel. So I look forward to spending 10 minutes with you, which, by the way, as a kid born and raised in Montana, I can't do anything in 10 minutes, barely tie my shoes in that amount of time. So this visual of transformation, just to set the tone a little bit, we've looked at these waves of innovation that have happened historically about every 100 years or so, and you can see on the slide here of what those have been, and where we are today, we're kind of on the cusp of this next wave of innovation. And one of the key takeaways that we should think about is that the magnitude of these waves of innovation continue to get larger and larger, but they also, we find, are coming closer and closer together. So instead of it being every 100 years or so, we now are finding that this is being accelerated in an incredible fashion. I'm going to show a video, and I'm going to do this thing that I'm going to show you is exactly the opposite of what Russ and his team told me not to do, which was show a commercial. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time that it is an Intel commercial, and it's going to be Rob Crook from Intel talking about all the greatness of Intel SSDs. It's his business unit. I don't want you to focus as much on the commercial aspect and all that it is from an Intel plug, but I want you to pay attention to the video with respect to what it means and use it as a visual illustration of how we see massive innovation and transformation happening underfoot.
The cloud has enabled mass connectivity of people, of resources, of information that was never possible before. Data and software used to be standalone, unconnected, slow, and limited to our personal use. Today, we tap into the power of thousands of interconnected computers. They provide an amazing array of capabilities that make the world a smaller place. And that's really the power and the beauty behind it. That constant connection, sharing video and pictures, planning vacations with family and friends, social networks, search applications, streaming content, email, using GPS, and having it all in the palm of your hand. It creates a feeling of being closer. But cloud computing doesn't just benefit personal use, it benefits businesses too. They rely on the cloud for enterprise applications to scale capability and services in real time without having to depend on a cumbersome internal infrastructure. The cloud enables us to access information and applications at any time from almost any place. And whether it's 3 people or 3 million people, there's an expectation that it will work instantly and flawlessly. The ability to store and analyze huge amounts of unstructured data extends into some of today's most challenging big data problems. We're going to get to a point and say, hey, I'm going to my 10th year reunion, and I want to find a picture that I took 10 years ago. And I don't want to wait any longer to get that picture than the picture I just took yesterday. As a cloud provider, meeting this user expectation of instant and affordable access to data is the first challenge. Then you've got to make sure that data is reliable and always available. The last thing anybody wants is an outage. And then, of course, there are always cost and physical limitations that apply to all of us. So as usage and demand for spontaneous access grows, it drives a bottleneck in the data center that can be directly linked to hard disks. Hard disks today have been around for so long that nobody really thinks about them anymore. Engineers have spent tons of energy building whole systems that are designed to offset their inefficiencies. But the truth is that hard disks cannot keep up with the processing power of the data center, and they require a large amount of energy, both from a power standpoint and from a cooling standpoint. And this is where solid-state drives come in. SSDs provide a huge cost savings. They need less power to operate, they run cooler, and their higher performance allows you to optimize your system for cost. So the operating cost and the carbon footprint of the data center that deploys them shrinks. But not all SSDs are created equal. While SSDs are 1,000 times faster than hard disks at the physics level, many SSDs rely on controllers that are inconsistent, that let the work pile up. This undercuts the value of using SSDs. Why put a faster drive in your data center that isn't fast all the time? Intel has designed its own controller that has very tight, predictable IOPS, making it fast every time you need it. Now, this is where things get interesting. Imagine spending less energy worrying about the data and where it sits on the disk, and more about the user interface or another piece of that system. Intel SSDs are breaking the paradigm of the traditional storage model for the data center. A hard disk is spinning around in a circle, and there's something mechanical measuring magnetic fields off a rotating disk moving at the speed of rust. It's an antiquated technology. A semiconductor operates at the speed of light. It's 1,000 times faster. That's like being able to fly to Shanghai in a minute, as opposed to 10 hours. And if you could do something 1,000 times faster, you really don't just do the same thing. If it only took you a minute to fly to Shanghai, how often would you go? You would change the way you use transportation. It would fundamentally change what it is that you do with technology. Intel SSDs are not just a little faster, or a little cheaper, or a little more consistent. They are consistently amazing. SSDs are fueling innovation in the data center. And with the right computing behind them, we're able to do things and provide services to people that were just not possible before.
So again, the message isn't, obviously if subliminally it stuck with you that Intel SSDs are great, fine. But really it's that illustration, and it's not just Intel. The industry as a whole is rapidly changing. If you look at in the high-performance computing space, another visual example that just as recently as 20 years ago, with ASCII Red and a high-performance compute system of over 9,000 processors now can be done on a single Xeon Phi, and actually that Xeon Phi providing 3 times the compute from a T-flops perspective. But it begs the question, if you could go to Shanghai in a minute, what would you do differently? If you put that in the context of government transformation. Did anybody see the Ashton Kutcher testimony here in the last few weeks on human trafficking at the Capitol or in D.C.? He talked about, and I think it's a good example there, right? He talked about what his organization is doing with their tool Spotlight, and now having that in the hands of 4,000 law enforcement officials across 900 agencies, reducing investigative time by up to 60%. They've identified over 6,000 trafficking victims, 2,000 of which were minors. So think I want to leave you with some questions, and it's what if? Because I think possibility thinking is a good thing. What if we could move from addressing the $125 billion problem of fraud detection in public sector via the use of data analytics, like what's already happening in places like Department of Healthcare Services, phenomenal work, by the way, but now instead of just fraud detection, that we actually get to fraud prevention using artificial intelligence capabilities. And this work is already happening today. What if we could move from a model of accessing video from dash cams and body-worn cameras as evidence in law enforcement to a model of real-time data from an array of unrelated sources that are then having that data presented to the officer so that we actually get to a point of true crime prevention. What if we could have a seamless model where the innovations and research happening around precision farming and irrigation that's happening in the higher ed spaces like UC Davis and in the private sector, if we can have that dovetail directly into the efforts of the Department of Water Resources, Food and Ag, Forestry and Fire, and vice versa, optimizing the economic impact and sustainability. There are just a few questions that hopefully stick with you. And if you look at the transformation happening all around us, we should be inspired by what's out there and how we might apply that into our own worlds. And if there's any one thought I would leave you with from my perspective would be, what are we going to stop doing? Because I think to get to the point that we want to get to the fastest, we have to stop doing redundant processes within our world. And with that, I'll give up my 10 minutes and go to the next guy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregg. Gregg Descheemaeker, folks.